Hello, my name is Alex Downey-Ging. I'm the current membership manager for Quidditch Canada, and this video is going to go over how to organize a Quidditch tournament. So this is based on my own personal experience organizing tournaments over the past several years. It is not the definitive guide. There might be other recommendations from others on how to do it, but I'm putting this video together because it sounds like some of our members are looking for some guidance on how to plan a tournament. So why organize a Quidditch tournament? So this is actually a good place to start. I wouldn't recommend planning a tournament without a purpose, because this will help you later if you're having problems or having to make decisions, help you remember why you're doing it, and that can help you in deciding what's best. It seems obvious, but it actually helps to plan that out. So first thing, more games for your team. So if you are on a Quidditch team, you might want to have more games than you're currently having, especially if you're farther away from other teams. Planning a tournament is a good way to pull people in, gives more games for your team. The more games you play, the more experience you get, the better you are. So that's one reason that a lot of people plan tournaments. Another reason, some events have a minimum number of games that your team needs to have played to attend. So some years at regionals or nationals, we've had a minimum number of games that you have to play to qualify to compete. Another reason is to give players something to work towards. So when you're recruiting new players and you're trying to get them to keep coming out every week to your practices, sometimes it helps to have something that they can see on the horizon. So in 4 weeks, we have a tournament against so-and-so. It gives them actual reasons to improve their skills and not just, well, you know, I'm busy this week, I'm not going to show up. It gives them actually something to focus on working on. Planning an event with other teams that are at your experience level. So we now have a good range of both community and school-based teams. So if you find you're bringing your team to a tournament and it's not really an even matchup, that often you're either being destroyed by community teams or you are not getting challenged based on your player's experience, it might be good to organize a tournament with a specific group of players in mind. So I wouldn't recommend planning a tournament to exclude any teams, but if you're planning a tournament with the express purpose of inviting new teams or teams that have at least 30% of their roster are new players, that's a good enough reason to organize something, and you can invite people based on that. Building your resume or portfolio. So a lot of people in our community are students or young adults. A Quidditch tournament is a great way to add things to your portfolio or experience on your resume, especially if you're looking for a job in project management or event planning. But you can actually range out from that to other categories. So let's say you're a graphic designer and you're looking to really build up your portfolio. You can do the banner on event pages on Facebook. You can make the info package look really great. You can have stickers or merchandise to sell at the event. You can really be creative. So feel free to tailor your event to what you need. Also, you can meet new people. This is obvious, but when you invite other teams, they bring a lot of people. You get to meet a lot of new people that you might not normally. And finally, Quidditch is fun. All right, so what does a tournament director do? So a lot of the times you are responsible for planning the event. Unless it is regionals or nationals, you're probably the one deciding that you want to have an event, when it is, where it's going to be, how many teams, all of that. You are responsible for verifying team rosters. So we currently use Top Score. Teams have to register on Top Score and submit their rosters to you, to your event. So this ensures that they've actually paid their membership fee, that they're covered by insurance, that they're not currently suspended, that there's no other issues. So you have to have them submit the roster, which you're going to download off the website, but also at the actual tournament, you're expected to check the players' IDs. So you don't have to check before every game, but at some point in the day, at least once, you should be checking every single ID. So you should look on your roster, look at the ID that they hand you, make sure the name matches, and then make sure the picture on the ID matches who's standing in front of you. Some teams, they'll have their captain try and collect all of their IDs and just come hand them to you and show you. I think that's okay if you already are familiar with the team. You're just going through the list. But if you don't know who those players are, I'd really recommend have the actual player present their card to you, just to make sure there's no confusion or no one's trying to whether intentionally or not, mislead you. We don't want someone handing in an ID that doesn't actually match themselves. They're just playing as someone else who couldn't show up. Suspend or end a tournament due to unsafe conditions, including weather. So we never really want to cancel a tournament, obviously, but if you feel that something is making it unsafe for attendees or players, so anytime there's thunder and lightning, it gets canceled right away or suspended. Check weather apps to see, is this going to blow over in a half hour or 45 minutes? Could we just delay it? Or no, the whole day is now done. As well, if there seems to be an attendee or someone coming who is posing a threat to others, use your personal judgment, but it's always better to be safe rather than sorry. And this command comes from the tournament director that everyone needs to leave the field. We're suspending or ending the tournament for the day. Eject players or attendees if needed. Hopefully this never happens to you. It's a very rare instance, but if someone gets really heated about a call, if they're threatening referees or verbally assaulting attendees, anything that you feel it goes against our policies, you don't feel safe, someone's causing problems, you can ask them to leave. I always recommend you try and give a warning first, but if there's something that's going to be causing an issue, you need to be the one to make the call. Okay, so first step, if you go to top score, so if you actually just Google Quidditch top score, you'll get in there. When you have your membership, you can log in, and this page here under events has a lot of really great resources. So if you're thinking of planning a tournament, please go here, click through these, lots of really useful links. Create your event on top score. So under the events navigation, you can create your event. So this way other people can see your event, but also this is where you're actually officially registering your event. This is something that you'll see. You can name it, you can put an image in, all sorts of stuff. The one thing I do want to draw your attention to here, where it says what organization is running this event, this needs to be the team that is registered with Quidditch Canada or Quidditch Canada itself. So if you put your name here, that's not correct. Please reach out to me if you think you've messed up or you're unsure. But this is an insurance reason. This is only for people who are under our insurance. So the individual insurance is not what's covered here. Quidditch Canada resources. So if you go to quidditchcanada.com, about, and then our team, we have our staff all listed here. So you can scroll down, find the department head that you need. So gameplay, membership, anything like that. And then there's a contact us button that has their email address. So if you have any questions at any point or you're unsure, I'd recommend reaching out this way to our staff, and each of them have a range of volunteers underneath them that they might be able to loop in or forward your message to. I know right now Quidditch Canada is very Facebook centric, so a lot of our boards and our events are on Facebook. You're not really supposed to message individual Quidditch Canada staff on Facebook. The reason is a lot of our volunteers never get to check out from this job. They're available all day, and so if they're out, if they're visiting family, whatever, they might get your message on Facebook and forget to respond, or just they can't get to it right then. So I'd recommend always send an email. If you then are worried about your email hasn't been responded to yet, yes, follow up on Facebook or email someone else on our staff just to make sure that your question or concern is addressed. Info package. So I really recommend create an info package if you are planning a tournament. This is not required. Your games won't be unofficial if you don't have an info package, but this is going to save you so much stress and questions. So first thing, address. Where is the tournament happening? I would put in here the exact address that people can plug into a GPS or Google Maps to get there. And if there's any confusion, like if they put in that address, but actually they're not supposed to park in the parking lot closest to it, put that in the info package. Give them all the information. Any questions or mistakes that they're going to make, put it in here. Sitemap with venue information. So I like to actually take a screenshot from Google Maps, just actually draw on it, highlight areas. This gate is where you'll enter. This is the washroom. This is where you can get clean water, anything that they need to know. The schedule, you can create a schedule in a spreadsheet, take a screenshot, paste it in the info package, or you can make it a lot prettier, but they should know what time do we expect to have games, what time does it look like the tournament ends, is there other things happening other than games that are on the schedule that they should know about. Any policies you want to outline. So everyone participating is a registered member with Quidditch Canada. When they get that membership, they have agreed to the policies that we have, but if for some reason you want to remind people of certain policies or you think they need a refresher, you can copy and paste or link that in the info package just as a reminder that you're not going to tolerate certain things. Deadlines. You need to set deadlines. Anything that you personally need information by, you can put in here, but the most common one is the roster. The roster has to be submitted before the tournament actually happens. You will be using the roster information to put together your scorecards, so definitely have that deadline in there. If there's anything else, like a deadline that a hotel discount can be used by, or anything else that they need to submit, I don't know, maybe you need photos for trading cards or something, put all those deadlines in there. Anything different about this event. So if you're offering prizes, team spirit awards, put in there, how is this going to be determined? Or is there a tiebreaker? Is there something about the venue that needs to be noted? Put all that information in there. The info package, people don't necessarily check right away, but the morning of the event and the night before, they usually have a lot of questions. Most people know now to check the info package before they reach out to you, the tournament director. So if they can't get a hold of you because it's the morning of the tournament and you are already on the field setting up equipment, they're not panicking because what is the address? I can't figure out how to get there. If they reach out to someone else who's also attending the tournament, they'll probably say, did you check the info package? It's in the info package. So give your players the ability to answer their own questions. So here are two sample schedules. So the one on the left, if you've never planned a tournament before, I'd really recommend you go with this format. So this is a 3-team tournament. You have teams A, B, and C. First game is going to be Team A versus Team B. Second game is Team A versus Team C. Third game is Team B versus Team C. Not too complicated, pretty straightforward, gives everyone a chance to play everyone. And this actually won't even take a full day. You could do a morning and then everyone gets to go home, or you could do an afternoon and put in other things into the schedule. So on the right here, this is one from a couple of years ago that I did at a festival. The festival was 2 days long, so they wanted Quidditch on both days, which is why we have a 2-day tournament here. I really would not recommend doing a 2-day tournament if you haven't had much experience with tournaments. It's just a lot. But here's an example. So we had 6 teams attending, and so we broke them into Pool A and Pool B. So Pool A is playing each other on day 1, so they never play anyone in Pool B. And then in the middle of the day, we have a break for, so a couple things. So the middle of the day, there's a break for Quidditch. Because this was a festival, there's going to be kids attending. Gives the kids a chance to try the game, which is pretty fun. It also gives most of the players a break. They can go get lunch or water or whatever. And then after that, we have a referee and snitch clinic. So they're designated people to run each of these events. So the referee clinic is for any certified referees or people interested in becoming referees. They could go over some common misconceptions or review just things in the rule book, gives them a chance to talk to someone from gameplay. And the Stitch Clinic, get all the snitches together and they can try things out. Really great skill building opportunities. Any of these sorts of events do kind of need guidance. So if someone hasn't run a clinic before, maybe give them some support or don't schedule them for a full hour to run the whole thing. So day 2 is based on how people played on day 1. So this first game is B2 versus A3. So what that means is in Pool B, whoever came second on the first day is in that slot, and A3, whoever came third from Pool A, is there. And then if you look at the third game here, A1 versus this B2, A3, that's whoever won that B2, A3 game in the morning is then going to face whoever came first in Pool A. So if you want, you can, in the middle of the day, you could come up with the rest of the schedule based on how people play. I really recommend giving yourself enough time to rejig that schedule because it takes time and to figure out your referee schedule, but it is possible. So you can Google all sorts of templates for, a 4-team tournament, an 8-team tournament, a 16-team tournament, a 3-team tournament, whatever, and see different layouts. So these are just some ideas of what's possible. If you go into Top Score and you go under officials to certified officials, we have this directory here of who are certified officials. So you can see who's coming already and who you might want to pull in and ask to come. AR is certified assistant referee, SR is snitch referee, snitch field test. Depending on the season, you might have to have a snitch be field tested to be able to play at your tournament, or do their field test at your tournament to be considered. HR means they've passed their head referee test, and HRFT is field tested. So again, depending on your tournament, they might need to have passed both the test and the field test. Reach out to Gameplay if you're not sure. And the other thing is they also have to have paid their Quidditch Canada membership fees. So if you don't see someone on this field and you think they are certified, reach out to us. We can explain why they're not on there, or maybe this list just hasn't been updated. So the other example, so this was a tournament we ran this fall, this past year. I've just put these two things up here. You don't have to put this, but I'm kind of emphasizing to people, hey, you need to show up on time. And for day one, we have each of the teams, and then we have the volunteers. So something that you would want to do is put the actual names of the people who are supposed to be reffing. And I've also put the team that they are associated with, so that if for some reason you're having trouble finding them, you know which team to go bug and say, hey, where is Michael? For the other positions that are not certified, I believe we just put the team name. So this is any volunteer. They don't have to be certified for these other positions. And then videographer, because we like to have video. Videographer is optional. You don't have to have that at your tournament. And this is for gameplay to review or maybe put on our YouTube channel. This is not used for instant replay at the event. And then the snitch you might not show on your schedule. It might be secret, but at this one we decided it doesn't matter. We could publicly put that. And then we also had a list of other snitches that were available, so that at the last minute, if we needed to change something or if a snitch was injured, we could use someone else. So you can add more columns here depending on who's available. Just remember any of the ones that they have to pass tests for, you have to pay them. So make sure you budget that in before the event if you're putting a registration fee or if you have to raise money to cover that. Okay, so where to host? If you are affiliated with a school, you're lucky because a lot of schools have very high quality fields that are available to student groups and clubs for free. Not all of them, some of them will cost money, and a lot of them do book up at the start of the semester. So if you're thinking of doing this, I'd recommend contacting your athletic department as soon as possible, see what fields are available, and if there is a wait list, get yourself on a wait list so that for next semester or next year, your team is being considered for a space. Another thing is some schools will reserve fields for their elite teams if they make it to finals or playoffs, that they can use it. So find out, if we're saving this field for the football team, when do we find out if they qualify for finals? And so is there a date then that those fields might open up if they don't qualify? So definitely talk to them. I know not all schools do have fields and they might not make it available, but if yours does, take advantage of that. Second, partner with an event or school to use their space. So this is if you maybe don't have a space of your own, see if there are other schools or events that will let you use their space. So one option is, let's say there's a local junior public school near you that you would like to use their field. So they might be willing to let you do a Quidditch day. So everyone who has gym on that day, you're either going to be there helping the gym teacher run Quidditch drills or teach kids Quidditch, and in exchange, you can use the field that weekend. And alternately, this is kind of free advertising for your tournament because maybe some of those kids will have fun at your gym class and come watch your tournament. This isn't always an option. Another thing we've done is we've partnered with festivals. So there's been some festivals about a certain boy who won't be named, but those events often already have a permit for public spaces, and they might be looking for content to entertain people who come. If you're thinking of doing this, please reach out to me. I have a lot of experience with this, and I think we're just stronger together. So let me share some of my information with you before you go and try to broker a deal with a festival if you haven't done that before. Third option is permits for public space. These are hit or miss depending on the city or town you're in. Some places it's just first come, first serve. Make sure you get to the field early so that you have it. Others, there's a lot of paperwork and fees. I know I've organized a tournament with the city of Toronto. I think it was about $200 for a soccer field permit, and they said it would take 3 months to be approved. So a lot of planning at that. I found with that one, I actually submitted it and then called them pretty regularly, and then I got it approved before 3 months, but that one's also kind of tough. If you decide that, hey, you know, whatever, I'm not going to pay for a permit, I'm just going to use this space anyways. I did once attend a fantasy tournament where the person did that and decided they didn't want to pay, but they made a public Facebook page. And little did we know that the city, I guess, keeps an eye on Facebook events happening on their fields that don't have permits because someone showed up and tried to give them a ticket. So follow the rules, or maybe don't make your Facebook page public. Another option is to rent turf. This is definitely going to be the most expensive, especially indoor turf. So talk to the teams before you book it, because you don't want to be on the hook for a deposit and then all the teams don't show up because it costs too much money. Alternately, again, maybe see if you can partner with someone else or talk to the venue about, is there a certain time or date that you might be able to get a better rate? Not always, but it's worth asking. So if you do have to book a place and it costs you money, you might want to look into grants. Quidditch Canada currently does not have a grant writer. If you think you're interested, let us know. But sometimes there are grants out there for certain causes. There might be grants for women in sports, or sometimes you'll see families who had kids who were into sports die. They've opened a grant in their honor to support athletics in their region. Other times there are communities that are trying to rebrand and they're just trying to make themselves seem like they have more interesting things happening, and they're willing to give a grant to having a Quidditch tournament in their area. So those are options. So back to top score. If you have decided you're going to do a tournament or some sort of event, go and register it on this page here. So this page here, this is linked to a Google form, and just let us know when you are having that event. It makes it easier for if people reach out to us and they're trying to figure out what tournaments are in their area, or if we are looking to do something like sometimes we've done snitch workshops or snitch certifications and we want to know where are these events, put it here as well. If you need insurance to book your venue, this is the form that you fill out to get that. So there's kind of two ways to look at insurance. The one is if you have registered as an individual player or a team, you're covered for if you are injured during a practice or an official game. So that you don't have to worry about that. You have that anyways. But if you need proof of insurance to show a venue to book the field, you have to fill this out, and then I'm the one who submits this. Let me know what they specifically requested, like what's the value that it has to be in, is there any additionally insured that it has to say, like anything that they've requested to see. Maybe talk to me after you've submitted this form, but this is where it goes through. Sending me a message on Facebook saying, hey, I need insurance is not the way to get it. That's just, it's not going to happen. So please fill out this form, and then feel free to message me on Facebook to say, hey, I submitted a form. Can I have this by this date? Considerations. Okay, so when you are picking a venue, where are people getting water? Is there actually drinkable water? If it's a public park and you're kind of in the mid-season like November, check when those drinking fountains get turned off. Because often in Canada, if it freezes, they will turn off those water fountains at a certain point. So make sure the cutoff date is not before you plan your tournament. Are there washrooms? Are there gender-neutral washrooms? What's there? What's available to people? Is one actually have change rooms and showers, or are there options in the different venues that you pick? is there space or time in the schedule for teams to warm up? So teams need to be able to jog around, maybe do some drills between games. You'll want to tell the teams if there's designated spaces for them to play, and if there's not really space because you could only afford a postage stamp of space, maybe put some time in the schedule so that people can warm up on the field. Parking or transit accessible. Will transit be running in time for the event to start? So you're not responsible for getting people to the field, but if a team or several teams don't show up because of confusion, that's going to really mess up your schedule. So if there's a parking lot there, or if there's 2 parking lots, but one of them is free parking, let your players know. Is it transit accessible? If you find out the week before the event that there's going to be a transit construction or a subway station is going to be closed, give people a heads up so they can plan the other way. Is there another event close by on the same day? You might not know this, but if you talk to the venue or if you hear that there is something else close by, that can affect how much parking's there. It can affect traffic. So all of that, give people a heads up. But also you might be able to pull some of those people to come watch your event or to buy merch if you're selling it at your tournament. Are there lights you can use to play and clean up after sunset? So once you know the date that your tournament is actually happening, you can Google Toronto, November 16th, what time is sunset? What time is sunrise? You can get the time that you'll have light. So you can actually plan around that. Cleaning up in pitch black is really, really hard. So give yourself lots of time to clean up when there's still light. If there are lights that you can use, make sure when you do a site visit that you ask them, and I can turn these on and off, or do I have to ask someone who works there? What control do we have? And make sure you ask if there are bylaws against the lights. So one time we had a regionals and there were huge stadium lights, which seemed great, but then we found out that because there were houses nearby, they don't want the lights on at all hours of the night, so you could only turn them on after, I think it was like 6:30 or something in the morning. So make sure you know those things, because if you're planning to show up at 4:30 in the morning and line the field, you're not going to be able to. Will the venue line the field? So lining the field with chalk or paint can really make your life as a tournament director a lot easier. Not all places will allow it, and some of them will, but it'll cost more. So you need to know that if you have to use cones, just be prepared that if there is wind, that you are probably going to have to remeasure and recone the field between every game. So have designated people to do that, or give yourself time that you can do that with a team. If working with others, get in writing what the venue will be. So this is kind of in terms of if you're partnering with a festival or tourism group. One time I planned a tournament and the venue said that, hey, we're going to use this soccer field for your tournament, which I thought that's great, looks awesome, did a site visit, looked great. And then a month before the event, they said, actually, we're not going to use that. We're moving you to this public park. Here's the address. I looked it up on Google Maps and it looked like a big green space, should be good. But because I hadn't checked this place, I went out to see it. And when I stood where they had pointed me to, it was a hill. So if you put the ball down on the grass, it would roll. So clearly not suitable for an official game. So luckily, because I was there, we were able to scout the area and find a different place, but don't trust pictures or word of mouth. Actually go and see it, but also put in writing when you agree to plan the tournament what you need. So don't just say a field, say grass or turf. Like, is it okay if they give you a dusty, muddy field? Is it okay if it's pavement, hardwood floor? Does it have to be flat? Is it okay if there's holes or sewer grates in the middle? Like, specify things so that if they do change the venue on you, whether intentionally or not, you have some power to say, that's not what we agreed on, or to even walk away if you need to. So definitely get all that in writing and plan a site visit. First aid. If you're planning a tournament at league level and this is a full contact game, you have to have first aid. So if you are on campus, or even sometimes not on campus, but if it's planned by a university team, there's a lot of these CERT teams, so RICERT, QCERT. They're student groups. that focus on emergency response. I've worked with many of them. A lot of them are pretty qualified and very friendly and helpful, so I'd recommend working with them. Usually they require that a student at that school fill out a form to explain the event, like how many people are going to be there, how many hours, all that. And a lot of times they really like if you post something on social media thanking them for their time. So this is often free, but just put a post saying like, hey, thanks again to RYCERT for coming out. We really appreciate your help at our Quidditch tournament. Just something to acknowledge them because they are volunteering their time for free. St. John's Ambulance, this is another one that can be free by donation. So they're really good. You have to book them in advance. We have found sometimes if you work with a city to plan your tournament, the city might already have a budget or an annual donation to St. John's Ambulance. So your event might be included in that, which is great. Private companies. Private companies can be really, really expensive. Book your first aid, one of the first things once you know the venue, because you probably want to avoid using one of these private companies. They often charge several $100s for a couple hours of help. Volunteers and officials. So you can recruit from attending teams. So you saw like the schedule I had just before. You can say, you know, for goal refs, for scorekeeper, timekeeper, it's going to be this team. Be careful when you're doing that because that can cause schedule problems. So if you have 2 pitches of games happening, if one pitch starts falling behind, both pitches will fall behind because you're using volunteers from the other teams. Another option is local high school volunteers. So some high schools have a certain number of hours that they have to volunteer in order to graduate. So these students can be very helpful or not. You're kind of hit or miss on who you get. Some won't show up, but some will, and they're really helpful. So these are great for goal refs, a scorekeeper. Depending on how focused they are, they might be able to be a timekeeper. Just keep in mind that they need breaks, and especially if they're outside and exposed to the elements, maybe don't schedule them for a whole day, but that can definitely help out. So if you're having trouble getting certain people, so let's say there's not a lot of head refs in your area, or there's a limited number of snitches, you might make it a requirement of teams attending your tournament to bring a certain number of these certified officials. It's not uncommon to say, you know, teams first come, first serve to attend my tournament, but you must arrange a snitch to come with you. So that could be a snitch as one of their players, or that they help plan who the snitch is that they're bringing. Having non-playing volunteers. This is always recommended when possible. So if you know head referees or assistant referees that maybe are not associated with the team coming that weekend, have them come. Some people will come just because they're helpful and they love Quidditch. If you're having trouble, you might want to offer them a free meal or reimbursing their gas. So consider that in your budget, but having non-playing volunteers is always a great move. Have someone help plan your event. So some of you, if you're based around Ontario, you know I do a lot of events with Joseph. We actually met planning tournaments together. So it's really great to not be on your own planning a tournament, just because it helps keep you sane and avoid stress. But it's also more fun to have someone else to share the experience with. And it's also really good to run things by someone before you make it public. So when you put together a schedule or the info package, or you're picking a venue, it's good to have someone else that you can bounce ideas off of before you make it public, to just cut down on the number of public mistakes that you make. So especially if you've never done this before, get a mentor, or even just get someone else who hasn't done it before to help you out, just so that you have more of a team to support you. Decide if you need field managers, registration, event staff, videographers, lots of positions you can create. So if you have more than one field of games happening, you should have field managers. You would have each field have a field manager, and that way there's multiple people who can help out. Photographers are great, especially if you are working on promoting, like let's say you're affiliated with a team and you're creating content to promote the team. If you received a grant, oftentimes it's really good to give a photo to the people who gave you a grant to say like, hey, this is what you helped make happen. Registration event staff, when you're signing people in, it can help to have multiple people there. It really depends on what you want from your tournament. So there's lots of positions. especially communications. You could have a specific person be responsible for communications, and that could include social media posts, updating a whiteboard by the field with the day's schedule and scores, tweeting, talking to the press, even updating your schedule or your referee schedule. So there's a lot of work. Delegate and assign things to people to make sure that everything gets done on time. And finally, contact Quidditch Canada for help. We have a lot of great people. We might not be able to come out to your tournament specifically, but especially ahead of time, if you give us some notice, we can help advise, help you find things. And if there's things that you're stressing about because you're having trouble finding that final head ref, or you have several head refs but you haven't worked with them before, how do you decide who gets to referee the final match or anything like that, just reach out to us and we should be able to help. Accommodations. So not every tournament needs accommodations, and you're not necessarily responsible for booking the accommodations, but if anyone is coming from out of town, they're probably going to ask you, so it helps to have an answer. So one of the cheapest options, and one of the options that have been great for years, is having people bring sleeping bags to stay with players who live nearby. So if you are the hosting team, you might survey your players to say, hey, does anyone have a living room or an extra room that people can sleep in? How many people do you think you can fit? And then you tell the teams coming that, yeah, we have enough room for 12 people. The rest of you will have to get hotels or just go home that night. But it's good to have options. This can also be a lot of fun to meet people. Just if you are staying at someone's place, be nice. Like, don't empty their food from their fridge and make a mess. Like, say thank you and bring your own snacks. Campsites can be a very affordable option. So I've done tournaments with campsites. The only problem with this, I'd say, is I'd recommend having each team sign off on their own campsites. You don't want to sign to book a campsite and then have all the liability on you. So if a team trashes their campsite, it should be their name on the contract. Same thing with hotels. The team should be responsible for booking their own hotels, but hotels are definitely the nicest because they have washrooms and showers and fridges and all sorts of nice stuff. Which also brings us to stay and play policy. So stay and play policies have kind of a mixed reaction to people. Some people like it because they don't have to worry about finding a hotel. Everyone's at the same place. If we're trying to get bids from places, a lot of times they want to see an economic impact. So hotels can be a big part of that to say, this many people are coming to your town. They spent this much on hotels. They're buying food. They're maybe seeing local attractions. So that can help us attract better bids for regionals and nationals. Sometimes you can get a deal with hotels if you have a stay and play policy. So you'll have a booking number, and this can get a better rate for the teams, but also the hotel might have a deal that for every X number of rooms that are booked under your name, will give you free rooms, which you can use for your volunteers. So that can definitely be helpful if you're bringing people from out of town to help run this tournament, that you don't then have to also pay for a hotel room for them or send them home ahead of time. You can keep them for multiple days to help set up and clean up and things like that. Another benefit to having all the teams stay at the same hotel, especially for a regionals or nationals, if you are tight on time for the weekend, the Friday night before, because everyone's at the same hotel, you can plan things like ref review, ref training, or check-in or anything like that, because everyone's already together and you can have a site. So again, when you're booking lots of rooms at a certain hotel, they might be able to throw in a conference room or something for free. So let's say your tournament is a Saturday and a Sunday. This could get you a conference room for the Saturday night, and then you and your gameplay team could go over the day's scores, the day's complaints, the day's red cards, whatever, and actually go through and plan for the next day instead of sitting on someone's bed and trying to figure out the schedule and things for the next day. Equipment. Have extras in case things break. So a lot of hoops are designed to break in certain ways, just so the whole thing doesn't break and so people don't injure, but have extra pieces. have duct tape when in doubt, and essentially you need to have a table at the side of each field with 2 chairs for the scorekeeper and timekeeper. So I'd say those are the basics. The referees are expected to bring their own whistles and things like that, but it can still help to have extra things on you. If you think it's going to be cold outside, I would recommend bringing pencils for people to write on the scorecards. Pens can kind of freeze, but when in doubt, just bring extra stuff in your backpack and have extra stuff in the car for if needed. Okay, so scorecards and timekeeping. I think we could create a different video on this if people want us to go more in depth, but your volunteers do need to fill out scorecards and keep time if they are assigned to that. So you need to go over with them how to do this before the game, or go over with your field managers how to fill in the scorecards and how to keep time, because this can affect if your games are actually official or not. So focus on following that. If you don't know how to do this, reach out to Gameplay or myself. But have the scorecards. So once the rosters are submitted online, you have to put those names into the scorecards. And the scorecard is available on Top Score on that resource page if you need it. So you have to put the names in, so it takes time to get all that done and print them out. But print a few extra blank scorecards just in case something gets damaged or you have to recreate one or something. You don't want to be at the last minute trying to find a printer to get that ready. Go over to how to fill in the scorecards and keep time. If you have roster reserves, make sure you know the roster reserve policy. So usually 21 players can be on a team, but they can have roster reserve. So these are people who will not play until someone on the team is pulled out by their captain. And then usually once that person is pulled out, they cannot return to any more games. So you gotta make sure they're not on later scorecards. And yeah, just make sure it's clear in your info package how this works. So if the captain has to provide to you in writing when someone is removed and someone is added, make sure all that is followed, not that just someone's yelling at you from across the field like, oh, I'm putting in this person instead of that person. We like to have people provide in writing because that way it's not an afterthought. You have something written that you can put in a binder to refer to if you're getting overwhelmed with the day and you're trying to keep everything straight. Have people print their names when done, not sign. So actually I'll pull up the scorecard. So this is the current scorecard. So you would have the names on the sides here with their numbers. You might want to put the numbers in the day of if you think that might not, if they're not using the same jerseys, the numbers might change. Captains also need to fill this out. On the back, there's a place where people can put feedback on the referee. This is optional. They don't have to fill this out, but we do recommend that they fill it out to give Gameplay a better idea of who we have working here. That's the scorekeeper or timekeeper's responsibility, but you should be responsible for teaching them how to do that. So if people aren't sure about this, we could create another video sometime just to go over that. And finally, you have to scan and send these to Gameplay the week after the event. I believe right now it's 7 days from your event. So even before the tournament happens, you should be putting in your calendar or setting a reminder on your phone that, you know, the Tuesday after the tournament that you make time to scan these and send them to the Gameplay department so that your games are official. Teams are going to be pretty mad if you don't do this and their games are not official. It also just looks really sloppy on you. Now, I understand that sometimes there might be instances where there's a mistake. So let's say there's a huge downpour of rain at your tournament and your scorecards are ruined and you're trying to figure out how to put these together to send to Gameplay. To avoid this kind of situation, I recommend every time that the game ends and the captains and everyone signs that sheet, just take a quick picture on your phone, and that way you have that for reference if it is damaged by the weather or you lose it or something awful happens. That shouldn't get in the way of you submitting your games so that they're official. The schedule. So this is my personal opinion. This is not a Quidditch Canada rule, but just from my experience scheduling, do not schedule more than 4 games per day. I just find after that, teams are really tired and cranky. People are getting dumb injuries. 4 is like the perfect number. Some teams might not agree with you, or agree with me, sorry. So you can change that. You can organize as many games as you want, but that's just my advice. 4 games per day is the ultimate number. If teams are traveling a long way, so if they're coming from out of province, they've spent money to fly to your tournament, they want to play more than 1 game. So make sure you schedule them for more than 1, or tell them when they're signing up what's happening, so they know that they're not just playing one game. Unfortunately, sometimes things are out of your control. If it's lightning and thunder, or if a team is disqualified or forfeits, their later games might be canceled. So there are situations where they might not get to play as many games as they hope to. Sometimes in that case, you can plan consolation games, but I would say as the tournament director, focus on just planning or focus on executing the scheduled games that are official. That is your priority. If another team is disappointed because they don't have enough games, if you can plan a consolation game, that's great, but don't spend your time planning that and let the official games get sidetracked. So really the best you could do is say, pitch 3 is available this afternoon. We'll leave the equipment there, but you're not responsible for now putting together a rough schedule and everything for them. Just keep that in mind. Give yourself room in the schedule if there are delays. So lately we've been scheduling with 1 hour time slots. So the game starts at 2, the next game starts at 3, and so on. This is usually pretty good because it gives you a lot of time if you have a really good snitch or if there's delays, but it can make that sometimes there's really long gaps between the games. So if the game only lasts 25 minutes, and then the next game is disqualified, there's a really long gap between games, which can be not great. So have an idea of the snitches that you're inviting and for how many teams are there, is it likely to go off schedule. You can get away with 45-minute time slots depending on what's happening, but this is something you kind of need to just actually schedule games for, and you learn from it on how long it usually takes your team to set up fields and get games going. Be prepared to cancel games. Like I said, we don't want to do this, but obviously if people are going to be injured or there's a problem, it is up to you to cancel the game, and you need to be able to cancel it. You don't want to wait too long and then people get injured. So an example of this is one year at regionals, the stadium we were using kind of ended up acting as a wind tunnel. We got these high winds, and it got to the point where the tents that we had over the scorekeepers table were going to blow away, even though they were weighted down. So we have people just holding the tents so that they don't blow away. And anytime that's happening, like someone's not briefly touching it to make sure it doesn't blow, but they actually have to stand there to hold it, the winds are too much. The games need to be canceled. And we did. I believe we canceled the afternoon of those games. And so anytime things are flying around, if someone's going to get hit in the head by it, whether a spectator or a player, that's not safe. So you need to be able to make that call. You can add extras in depending on the reason why you canceled. So there was a festival that we had a team forfeit, unfortunately, on the second day. And because of that, the festival had agreed, in my communication with the festival, they wanted full day Quidditch happening. We had provided the schedule, and that was in little brochures that attendees had seen. So it's very possible that people are planning to come to the 4 o'clock Quidditch game. So just eliminating the time slots where the team that was disqualified was scheduled for wasn't really an option because there's supposed to be content during that time. So we put in Quidditch games for that, which was good. But keep in mind what your commitments are. So if this is just, you've just invited some Quidditch teams, there's not really spectators, you totally could change around the schedule if you need to, if there's canceled games, but just keep in mind of all your commitments and who you've talked to and what you can change. So in advance, when you're planning the schedule, you can put in things other than games. So you could put in social events, you could put in opening ceremonies, ref briefings, any of that stuff. When the International Quidditch Association, when they used to do World Cup, I remember opening ceremonies was all the teams brought banners and signage and things, and all the teams would kind of march around the block, kind of telling the area, Quidditch is here, and also it drew in people to come and watch, which was a fun thing. Social events, I remember one time U of T Scarborough, as a fundraiser, after their Quidditch tournament, they booked a room on campus and they filled it with board games and snacks. And then they charged players, I think it was like $5 to $10 to come in. So it charged cover to this like board game social night, which was a lot of fun. So you can plan things around. You don't just have to plan the games themselves. timelines. So I think the ideal timeline for planning a Quidditch tournament is 2 months in advance. Depending on your event, like I said, if your school requires that you book fields before the start of the semester, or if you're applying for funding and things, you might need a longer timeline. Similarly, you might find out 2 weeks in advance that you have a field available and, hey, since we have this field, let's plan something. So it's up to you how long you want, but I recommend 2 months just to make sure you have enough time to plan everything accordingly. Make sure you set deadlines for registration fees and roster submissions. So if you are charging a fee to the teams that are coming, make sure you charge for that. And roster submissions, people should know in advance when the submissions are due. You shouldn't just say that day, hey, they're due today. So exceptions and day of decisions, you're definitely going to have to make a call on the day of, unfortunately. Either a team has realized something or there's an issue with the venue. So just remember why you are planning the event, and that should help guide you in your decision. If you have other tournament directors or assistant tournament directors or other staff with you, make sure it's clear with them how a decision is made. So do you all have to get together and discuss it before a call is made? Are there certain people who can give information, and what is the correct way? So make sure you tell each of the teams, don't leave a team out. Would it be posted on your event page, your Facebook page? Would it be said in person? Take the time to think it through if you need to. Some people might really pressure you for an answer right there on the moment, but sometimes it helps to just step back and remember what you're doing and your commitments before you make the call. Consider player safety. So like I said before, you don't want anyone getting injured, but just prepare, things go wrong. It's not the end of the world, but planning ahead can help you avoid a lot of those decisions. So another thing is, remember, you're the tournament director. You're not there to be everyone's best friend, unfortunately. So a team might be disappointed that you're not letting them change their roster at the last minute, let's say. But if you have to put together the scorecards, you can't actually afford to delay it later. So there's reasons, and you don't necessarily have to explain your reasons. So be confident in sticking with your decisions. But if you do decide to postpone it or change what your decision was, so let's say, someone's decided after the roster submission deadline that they forgot to put someone in and they want to update their roster, you might say, yeah, that's fine. You'll have I'll open up the roster submissions until noon. But then as a courtesy, message all the other teams to let them know, hey, if you want to make a change to your rosters, I've extended the roster deadline until noon. So it's up to you, but you're not the bad guy if you stick with your decisions. Okay, day of. So the day of, the field will probably need to be measured and marked or coned. If you're getting it lined, a lot of places will do this ahead of time, which I really recommend, but then maybe show up ahead of time as well, just to make sure it was marked correctly. You don't want to show up the morning of and realize the lines are painted, but it's measured wrong, because it's going to be hard on a Saturday morning to find people to come out and correct that. So just plan ahead and give yourself lots of time. Have a plan to get your hoops, brooms, balls, all the equipment to the field. So if someone is driving it, a lot of places will let you drop off equipment the night before or during the week before, which I really recommend. Have them drop it off and put it in a storage place. But if someone is dropping off morning of, it shouldn't be 10 minutes before the game starts. It should be well in advance, so that if they are delayed or get in an accident, that you have time to arrange something else or get someone else to bring up the stuff. And just as equally, have a backup plan. So maybe don't have exactly the number of balls you need, have extras in case one breaks or people forget to bring it. Have a table beside the field for the scorekeeper, timekeeper. Really important. Bonus points if you have a tent over them, but that's optional. You don't have to have that. Be prepared to tackle last minute issues. So like I said, planning in advance should help you avoid that. But if there are questions at the last minute, know what you're going to do or how it's going to be announced that there are changes. Check IDs of players before games. So as the tournament director, you are responsible for making sure that the players playing are actually who they say they are, who they're registered as. You don't have to check before each game, but at least one point during the day, you should be checking IDs. Check in with first aid. So if you communicate with first aid, you've probably told them a time to arrive at the field. Go see them, introduce yourself as the tournament director. So if they have issues, they know who to talk to. Maybe point out where you're going to be. You can say, I'm going to be at that tent, or I'm going to be at that table beside the field, and talk to them about how do we flag you over if we need help. Is it enough for someone to just like at the side of the field wave for you and yell for help, or do we need someone to actually come to you to get you? If you have snacks or refreshments for your volunteers, like let's say sometimes you might order a pizza to give your volunteers for midday, I'd recommend giving them some pizza too, or saying thank you, or whatever you can do to make sure that they're still enthusiastic throughout the day. But if you don't have budget for that, you don't have to. It's just a bonus. Communicate with teams. So at some point in the day, you should be talking to each of the teams. They might have talked to you only online. So this can be a way to say, this is who you've been talking to online, and this is who you can talk to if there's problems. And any media. So you might not actually facilitate media. Some people might actually just come out because they've heard of your event and want to talk to someone for a quote. Again, your priority is running the tournament. So if you don't want to talk to them, you can defer them to someone else. But it might be worth talking to them just to get some positive coverage of your day. A word of caution: you can't control the story that they're going to tell. So don't be disappointed if they're spending the whole time talking about the Harry Potter series and the article or coverage is just pictures of Daniel Radcliffe on a broom. Unfortunately, you can't control that. Same with if really they're trying to do an article about the town wasted all this tax money on this stadium and they're interviewing you to talk about, look what our tax money went to support, what the heck is this? Unfortunately, you can't control that, but media can be good. It can help promote Quidditch to other people, and it can also be nice to just see a write-up of the day. So if you have someone on your team who has experience in journalism or communication, you can actually send out press releases to local papers and blogs and things ahead of time if you do want media to come cover your event. So if you are looking for that, it might help to have a designated person on your team communicate with the media so that the person responsible for the schedule or replacing the hoops when they're broken is not busy being interviewed when they're needed to help keep the game going. After the event, thank people. So a lot of people probably helped make your event happen. That could be your athletics department helping you find a field. That could be the people who came and refereed at your event. It could be your assistant tournament director. It could be the paramedics, or even just the teams for coming out. Make sure you thank people either personally or in a public post that you appreciate what they did or for their help. Scan and submit scorecards to gameplay. So like I said, often there's, I think it's 7 days after, but don't quote me on that. You might want to look that up again. But you have to scan and submit your scorecards to gameplay for the games to be official. So make sure you do that. Pay your officials. If these people have come and run your games and done all this, make sure you pay them on time. If for some reason you're not able to pay them on time, message them to say, hey, your payment is coming next week, or I'm working on it, just so they don't have to reach out to you and worry that they've been forgotten. Send a feedback survey, learn from the experience. So you can send a feedback survey to the teams and the individual players. Google Forms is really great for this. You can ask all sorts of things, or you might want to send it to your volunteers just to learn from that. If there are problems with your tournament, you don't want to have people not bother coming to your event next year, or even if you're moving on from your team, you don't want your team to get a bad reputation. So if there were issues, it's okay. Just make sure you learn from them. And again, if you hear people talking at the tournament and they're saying, like, oh, I hate this rain, I wish we had something indoors, maybe put that in your survey and ask them, next year, if we booked an indoor turf field and the tournament fee was this much higher, would you still be interested? That way you have actual information. So next year or in the future, if you plan your tournament, you actually have concrete data on, oh, actually no one else wanted to spend more money, so having it outside makes sense. Or actually, yeah, the teams were willing to spend more money. That's something I should look into for future events. And submit any post-event reports that your school or grant requires. So if you got a grant, or if you book the space through your school and part of that is you have to do a post-event report, make sure you do it. especially so that your team or yourself, you're not blacklisted from future spaces or grant requirements. Even if you're graduating and you're like, well, I don't care, I'm not planning this again. If your team tries to plan an event again in the future and they find they're just hitting roadblocks, you don't want it to be because you didn't bother filling out your post-event report. Like, recruit people to help you out with that. There shouldn't be a reason why that doesn't get done. So if you are starting out, I'd really recommend 3 teams, 1 afternoon, 1 field. It's a good place to start. I would not recommend starting with something really complicated, but we have great resources on TopScore, the link there. And you can also reach out to me or other Quidditch Canada people. I'd really like to help you guys do this, but Quidditch tournaments can be a lot of fun, so I think it's worth your time, and good luck.